Welcome back to Hardball. President Trump's denials of Russian involvement in the 2016 presidential election has fueled the Republican smokescreen around the Russian investigation itself. And Republicans seem to be buying, or had been, the president's argument. A recent Quinnipiac University poll found that nearly half, 49% of Republicans, don't believe that Russia tried to influence the 2016 election. In other words, clean hands. They did nothing. Mueller's indictments today outline definitive Russian efforts, however, to interfere in the election. So can Republicans keep on refusing to admit that Russia did what they did in 2016 with this elaborate new evidence? Tonight, the president's meeting with law enforcement officials, of course, and lawmakers in Broward County, Florida. As we wait for that, we're going to talk about this. So let's bring in the Hardball Roundtable. Ken Vogel, right here, political reporter for the New York Times. Yamiche Alcindor, White House correspondent for the PBS Newshour. And Jason Johnson, politics editor of The Root. In that order, tell us, will this news be new to people? Will it impact their thinking about the whole Russian role?
I don't think it will right now, because Republicans have worked so hard to discredit the Mueller investigation, discredit the FBI, and polls show that that's working, that Republicans believe that this is some kind of biased witch hunt.
That the Russians didn't do nothing.
I think it's...
Do they really believe that? They say they don't.
They couple those two things together, but I think historically, and as we move on, this document, this
remember Sergeant Schultz, I don't know nothing. I don't know nothing. How long can the Republicans say, well, I don't know nothing about the Russians involving in our elections last time?
I don't think that they can anymore. I think Republicans now can no longer just use the narrative that says, oh, Russia, this whole thing is made up, that we don't really know what's going on. They have laid out in 37 pages exactly what went on, so they can no longer say that they didn't know. And by the way, we were just watching President Trump say, did you see any Russians in West Virginia? Well, the FBI said, here are all the states that they visited. So, yes, there were Russians in those states.
I still, okay, this sounds very chauvinistic, but how did Boris and Natasha go bopping around these states and had nobody notice that they're showing up?
Right, exactly.
Maybe they have perfect, what do you call it, perfect idiomatic American accents. I don't know how they did it.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, I watched the Americans. They trained for years for this, right? Like, I don't think you could walk into West Virginia and Georgia and just hide your accent. People are going to figure it out.
I can't hide my Philly accent in West Virginia. How do you
I don't think it's possible. But here's what I think. We're just going to see, and we've heard this before, the narrative is just going to shift, right? Remember, it was no collusion happened. Then it was, well, collusion's not illegal. Well, it used to be the Russians didn't have any involvement, and now they're going to say, well, it wouldn't have made a difference.
The goal line
moving goalposts.
Although I don't think they're done with no collusion. I think that you already see Republicans picking through this indictment.
But you notice how Trump would give in on President Obama's birth certificate, and then he'd sort of pull back, and then he'd sort of fade out, and then on a boring day in October, say, oh yes, it's all bullshit. I'm sorry. Say that. No. Well,
I think part of this indictment is actually an effort to definitively show that there were Russian efforts to meddle in the election. Yeah. And maybe it's a message to Donald Trump as well as, I think, like I said, historically.
Okay, let's talk about the serious strategic question. Most countries would be focused less on a guy named Trump and his narcissism, and be focused on, we really do value democracy. America really, since the Greeks, we really started this democracy. We believe in it. It isn't completely perfect in terms of the franchise. Not everybody votes, but you're allowed to vote. And I just wonder, is this going to affect people in the way they look at the next election when they go down the voting booth and they leave the kid off, or they on the way to work and they go to, are they thinking now, I'm voting, but is somebody else playing a hand in this thing?
I think that it's going to also impact how people interact on social media. You're going to wonder, where are you getting your information from? Hopefully, people will then say, okay, I'm not going to just read the headlines on Facebook, that I'm actually going to go out and look for things, because the Russians were not just helping Donald Trump. There was in this indictment, we learned that they were also looking at Bernie Sanders and saying, hey, we should help him, and then they were trying to hurt Ted Cruz. So this is a little bit larger than Donald Trump. I think in the midterms, you're going to say, oh, I really like this senator, I don't like this senator. So you start thinking at home, okay, well, why am I voting for this person? Is it because my friend on Facebook told me to vote for him, or because I actually know what's going on?
By the way, I should apologize for that word, BS. I usually say BS. I said the full word this time. I didn't mean to. But I am a little concerned about this thing, to say the least. It does seem strange. We have the school shootings. I'll talk about that at the end. A president won't do anything about the AR-15. It's out there. Nothing about these weapons in the hands of teenage kids, which is totally legal. Nothing about that. Nothing really about the Russian interference. Not doing a word against it. It is BS. I shouldn't have said the full word. Your thoughts, Jason?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we have both domestic and international concerns, and our president doesn't seem to care, or our president consistently wants to deny these things. And look, we have the head of the CIA. They've said, hey, the Russians are planning on doing what they can in the 2018 election.
Yeah.
And what concerns me long term is not phishing, a phishing email that goes to some blue-haired lady in the middle of Ohio for a state Senate race. I'm concerned if they start targeting particular senators. They can look at committees. It's not that hard. They can say, hey,
by the way, there's a blue-haired lady in Ohio right now. I heard
he was going to be very unhappy with me.
You better apologize for that.
But they can look at purple districts and say, this is where we should put our efforts. I mean, they could watch cable news, or they could be reading the same books that used to have political science students reading all over this country to say, this is going to be the places that we need to be focused on. And they know the issues of America. Race is something. Immigration is something. Wages, their wages.
We got buttons.
Yeah. We have very clear buttons that Russia can press.
By the way, I think, Ken, maybe their last one, I think it's a fairly good bet, and I think about this all the time, that 2018 is going to be close in the House. I'm not sure the Democrats are going to walk away with this. I think it's going to be within 10 or so either way. And I think, I also think that, unless they get a message, which would help, but I think the 2020 election is going to be close. I don't think Trump's an easy guy if he runs again to beat. I don't see the strong Democratic contender emerging yet. So if the Russians push a few buttons, they can affect the election result again.
Yeah, with all this stuff, it's difficult to determine definitively, like, did they make an impact in this state or that state?
Yeah.
But, and frankly, I thought some of the stuff was rather unsophisticated, like that they had to go travel to West Virginia to learn what were purple states. Like you said, you could find that stuff online. That said, the fact that they were willing to spend this much money and put together this kind of sophisticated effort, and that they're willing to do so again when an election is very close, you just don't know at the margins how much something like this could affect the result.
And I got to say this at the end. What we also have to remember is we've got 13 indictments against people in Russia. Remember last year when we had like 9 Russian diplomats magically disappear? Clearly, someone over there might be concerned about the impact of us investigating this issue as well. I don't think the fact that we have found 13 people now that Mueller wants to indict is the end of this. I think there could be a lot more.
I think, as is pointed out by Ken Delaney and others, what's going on here is establishing an underlying crime, and then anything henceforth is going to be conspiracy to obstruct or to collude. Anyway, the roundtable's sticking with us. You're watching Hardball.